On today's Locked On Giants podcast, part two of my comprehensive plan to fix the New York Giants. That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, we're going to do part two of my comprehensive plan to fix the Giants. So I'm going to cover free agency, the other part of free agency, which is a look at other teams' free agents that I think the Giants might look into. And I'll tell you why I picked these positions and these players. Then in segment two, we're going to talk about the draft, what I think the Giants might do, not what I would do, what I think they would do. And then finally, in segment three, the Giants made some coaching decisions today. Jerome Henderson's out. Mike Trier is out. I'm going to weigh in on that. I originally wasn't going to do a segment on that, but I feel that I have to weigh in on that. Quite frankly, once I do the draft in segment two, that's pretty much the end of my plan. So yeah, I'm going to weigh in on the changes that the Giants made on the coaching staff on Wednesday. So that is today's agenda. Again, welcome on in. All right, let's get right to it. All right, so for those of you who missed part one of this show, you can catch that yesterday's show. And I covered, coaching changes. I talked about which free agents of the Giants they should keep. So, check that show out if you are just now tuning in. So this way you have the full Monty, if you will, of my plan. But I want to start off today's show with other free agents. Now, we all know quarterback is going to be one of the positions the Giants spend on. I have seen other people suggest that they go out and they get an offensive lineman. I don't think they should. All right. I'll explain why in a moment. The two positions where if I'm the Giants and I'm going to spend the bulk of my my cap space that I talked about on yesterday's show, I'm going to spend on a quarterback and a cornerback. All right, so let's start with quarterback. We all know that the Giants are going to bring in a bridge quarterback. They have to. All right, this is not a secret. This is not any kind of insider information that I'm breaking. We all know that has to happen. Tommy DeVito is not going to be that bridge guy. They'll bring him back, I think, because he's an exclusive rights free agent, but I don't think he's going to be the bridge guy. Okay, so who do they bring in? I have two guys that I'm looking at, actually three that I'll give you. All right, and one of them is not trading for Kirk Cousins. The more I think about it, the less I like the idea of Kirk Cousins coming here. I suspect maybe the Cleveland Browns might try and work something out to get Kirk Cousins. If they do, more power to them. But I don't think the Giants will necessarily go that route. And oh, by the way, for anybody who's wondering, if Dak Prescott becomes available, I don't think the Giants would make a deal with Dallas there either. Even if it was like a draft day trade where the Cowboys offered to trade up with the Giants and throw in Dak Prescott, I just don't see that happening. Not with Dak Prescott's contract. That contract would be a monster for the Giants to absorb. But anyway, let's talk about the free agents, all right? So the guys that I have on my list include Jimmy Garoppolo, who is coming off a 1-year, $3.1 million contract with the Rams, Justin Fields of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I would even consider like a Carson Wentz or an Andy Dalton if you wanted somebody really for the short term. But I think, in the Giants case, they'll probably go a little bit younger, and they're probably going to want their bridge quarterback here for at least 2 years. So I can see the bridge quarterback signing for at least a 3-year deal, 2 years guaranteed money. The third year is the out year if the Giants wanted to get out of it. So, what kind of money are we looking at? Well, Jimmy Garoppolo, like I said, he's coming off a 1-year, $3.1 million deal that he signed with the Rams to basically be the backup out there. All right. If he's coming to New York, he's not signing a 1-year, $3.1 million deal. It's going to have to be significantly more if he's a starter. Now, I also might say, okay, would you throw in some incentives into the deal? I could see doing that, making the deal more attractive. You throw some incentives in there, maybe include number of games won, maybe include a playoff incentive if there's one there, passing yardage incentives, completions, basically some of the incentives that Daniel Jones had in his contract. I would consider throwing those in to whoever the bridge quarterback is going to be. The guy, though, that I really like for the Giants is Justin Fields. Justin Fields is, I think, projected for a 1-year, $11 million contract by Spot Track. That's not too bad for a guy that's basically been, a backup out in Pittsburgh who showed some flash and basically who struggled, since coming into the league. Now, I would maybe look to pay Justin Fields a little bit more per year, maybe up that to where you get the number to about 20 to 25 mil. Because Justin Fields is still relatively unproven, and I don't think you're going to have to spend a big amount of money to get him. Certainly not 40 or $50 million. I can't see any team spending that kind of money on Justin Fields. So the thing I like about Justin Fields, folks, is he's still relatively young. And I think if he comes to this offensive system, he could really thrive in it. We always hear about Brian Dable, the quarterback whisperer. Let him work with Justin Fields. See if he can't maybe straighten out some of the other issues that Fields has had. So, Fields, I think, would be a good addition if you're looking at a bridge quarterback. I wouldn't hate it if they went with Jimmy G. Like I said, I could also live with an Andy Dalton or Carson Wentz, two older veterans, but that I would sign those guys only if I knew for sure I was drafting a young quarterback in this coming draft class, which they should, but we'll talk about that in coming up. Now, would I sign an offensive lineman? Looking at the Giants' projected starting offensive line, Andrew Thomas and Jermaine Illuminor should be the tackles, you would think. John Michael Schmitz should be the center. John Runyon Jr. should be one of the guards, which means there's really only one position open on the starting offensive line. That is probably going to be the right guard spot. So in that spot, what I would do if I'm the Giants, I would re-sign Greg Van Roten, see if he would be interested in coming back on another 1-year deal. I would have Van Roten, Jake Kubas, and Evan Neal all compete for that job. And as far as depth goes, I would look to maybe add depth in the draft. All right. I don't think the Giants should or could get away with not drafting an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman like they did last year. I think that was a big mistake, and I don't want to see it repeated, if I'm being honest with you. So I don't know that they necessarily need to sign a veteran free agent. Now, if they can get a swing tackle, a few years ago, they got a guy by the name of, I think it was Sean Locklear, who served as a swing tackle, probably one of the best moves they ever got, as far as like swing tackles go. If they can get somebody like that and maybe build a contract that has incentives, playtime incentives and whatnot, I'd be fine with that. I would also be fine with them bringing back Tyree Phillips as a potential swing tackle. All right. So offensive line, I'm going to say free agency. I don't think you need to go crazy there, but certainly, if you can pick up a few veterans pieces here and there, and then really focus on restocking the cupboard As far as the youth goes, that's the course of action I would take. Now, the other position that I would absolutely spend on if I'm Joe Shane is I would spend on cornerback. Cornerback is a huge, huge need. Okay. So that being said, let's take a look at this, right? So you've got Deontay Banks coming back. Cordell Flott is coming back. You've got Trey Hawkins, the third, who will hopefully be recovered from his back injury. He'll be back. Drew Phillips in the slot. You've got a lot of young guys back there. And I have been saying now for the longest time that they need a solid veteran back there. No disrespect to Adoree Jackson, but remember, they added Adoree Jackson late last year because, the injuries were starting in training camp and they had to bring him back, and he knew the system. So it was just easier to kind of bring him back and have him step in, especially given that he had played with the Tennessee Titans and it was kind of familiar with a little bit what Shane Bowen was doing. So I would say get a veteran cornerback, get a CB1, because right now Deontay Banks isn't that guy. All right. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the coaching aspect of it later in the show, but I don't think Deontay Banks is that guy. So I'm going to give you a few names that I would look into in free agency if I'm the Giants. And keeping in mind, you're going to have to spend for a shutdown cornerback. I get that. You're going to have to spend for a quarterback. You're going to have to spend for a cornerback. And with the Giants having over 50 million in cap space, that should not be a problem. All right. So the names I would look at: the Jets, DJ Reed, who per Pro Football Focus has a 52.26 shutdown rate. Not bad. I would look at maybe Carlton Davis of the Lions. I would maybe explore Byron Murphy of the Vikings, who I think at one point had 6 interceptions, which was tied for the most amongst cornerbacks. This was back towards the end of the season. If you wanted an older veteran, like past 30, and I don't know if I would necessarily go in this direction, but it would depend on what I was doing in the draft. You could maybe look at Mike Hilton from the Bengals, who's 31 years old. So any one of those guys as a veteran cornerback, I think would be intriguing. But I tell you, DJ Reed is a guy that I really, really like. And I would, I'm sure he's going to cost a lot, but given the state that the Jets are in, you would think the Jets would find a way to retain him. Lots going to depend on, who they bring in with the GM and the head coach and the DC over there. So it's possible that maybe DJ Reed wants to, test his market value and see if he can get himself a pretty payday. Why not? But those are some of the guys that I would look at cornerback. So basically the big money I would spend: quarterback, cornerback. I wouldn't really spend on offensive line. I would look for the draft. And I know some of you have also said, well, what about receiver? No, I don't think you need to spend big bucks on a receiver when you've got Malik Neighbors coming back. Edge rusher, you've got Thibodeau and Burns. I don't think you need to spend big money there. Defensive line, I would draft there. Linebacker, I think they're pretty much set at linebacker. I think they're pretty much set at tight end. Running back, you can make a case for, drafting a guy. So really, when push comes to shove, I think quarterback and cornerback are the two positions you got to tackle in free agency if you're the Giants. All right. Now, coming up, let's talk about the draft and what the Giants should do there. That's coming right after this. Hey, Giant fans, from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No more waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit fanduel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and I'm giving you part 2 of my plan to fix the New York Giants. We'll see how close I come with some of these suggestions. It's always fun to do this exercise early and then see how close I come with doing this. So, all right, let's talk draft. Now, the popular opinion that I see on social media, that I see in mock drafts, is the Giants got to get a quarterback. They got to get a quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, they got to get a quarterback. The problem is the Giants are drafting third. The Titans and the Browns both need a quarterback. As of right now, they could go free agency like the Giants will probably do, or the Browns could say, you know what, we're going to take Ward and or Sanders and leaving, and the Titans could do the same. So we don't know. But here's where I stand on this. My feeling is that while Ward and Sanders are two very good quarterbacks, worthy of being selected third, I don't really feel comfortable with the limitations of this quarterback class. In other words, it's basically Ward or Sanders. And if, say, Ward is off the board, now it's Sanders. And now if you're the Giants, it's like, well, we really like Ward better, but, now there's Sanders. Do we take him or do we trade down? So here's what I would do if I'm the Giants. And I know this is going to be very unpopular, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. All right. If I'm the Giants, I trade down from the third pick. I don't go far, but I trade down. And here's why I do that. You don't want to force a quarterback pick here. Even though the Giants desperately need one, you don't want to force one and make a mistake, especially in the first round. All right. You could potentially, if you're the Giants, if you trade down, now maybe you're picking up an extra second round pick. Maybe you're picking up an extra first round pick in 2026. You're adding assets. And this team, as we know, they have a lot of needs, a lot of needs. The more draft assets they can get, the better. Okay, so if you trade down, maybe on day 2, you look at Jalen Milroe if he's there. You look at Dylan Gabriel if he's there, or Quinn Ewers if he's there. All right. So you might have some better options that you could take a gamble with on day 2. Now you're saying to yourself, well, look, if you got an opportunity to take one on day 1, why not do it? Because you don't want to shop hungry. You don't want to settle. This is a huge, huge decision. Settling will just get you into trouble. Now, for all I know, Joe Shane, Brian Dable love Cam Ward, or maybe they love Shador Sanders, and this is all a moot point. But if I'm the Giants, I think it makes more sense to trade down. Again, not too far. I wouldn't maybe go past 6 or 7 at the most. And here's what you can do. In addition to getting some really good draft capital, you could potentially get, if they are on the board, an Abdul Carter. You could potentially get a Will Johnson, who you could potentially get a Travis Hunter if he's still there, or a Mason Graham. All guys that would be wonderful draft additions in the first round. Okay, so if Travis Hunter is off the board, well, guess what? You go for Will Johnson. Is that such a bad, drop off? I don't think it is. So you're getting guys to help that defense, which desperately needs a lot of help. And again, I'm not trying to downplay the fact that the Giants need help on offense. They most certainly do. They definitely need a quarterback, but you don't want to force it. And I think if you're the Giants and you can build up your assets to where now you've got some room to finagle in 2026, and you have the patience to wait until 2026 when the class is going to be a little bit deeper and you're going to have more options, I think it makes sense. Roll with your bridge guy. If you want to take a flyer on, like I said, a Milroe or a Gabriel or an Ewers or somebody else, go for it if you want to. But I would not necessarily go into the draft saying, we got to get a quarterback. We got to get a quarterback. We have to get this quarterback at number 3. I think that would be a mistake, right? Again, I know that's probably an unpopular opinion, and a bunch of you are going to write to me and say, you take the quarterback, don't get Q, take the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. And I know I've spoken before about, taking um, taking Travis Hunter. If both quarterbacks are off the board, Travis Hunter would be a great addition to the team. But if you're going to sign, I think, a shutdown cornerback in free agency, that might cause you to change your course of action to where you say, okay, you know what? We signed a guy in free agency. Now maybe our need for a CB1 isn't as great. So now maybe we go and we get a Carter if he's on the board, or a Mason Graham where we desperately need help inside the trenches on the defensive line. So that to me, I think makes a little bit more sense. And that's why, I always tell you guys, when you ask about what should the Giants do, where should they draft, who should they draft, that's why I always say free agency really kind of sets things up and gives you a little bit of a hint as to maybe what the team is thinking as far as, what they might do. So that's why in the past I've always been kind of reluctant to do mock drafts and all that stuff. But I do them anyway because, look, you guys asked for them and I try to give you what you guys asked for. So, all right. Coming up next, the Giants made some changes on their coaching staff. Going to talk about them, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services that I wasn't using anymore, and quite frankly, that I forgot about. And I've already saved a lot of money. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. There's no more stressing about budgeting every month. So go on, cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockdown today. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/lockdown. Hey, Giant fans, if you are looking to join an exclusive community of Big Blue Faithful, where you can discuss the team and receive inside information in a toxic-free environment, then you need to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community. Members get access to our exclusive by invitation only Discord channel, where we can talk with one another, ask questions, get breaking news, and so much more. Plus, as part of the Locked On Giants Blue Crew, I text exclusive updates and info directly to your phone, and you can communicate via text with me one-on-one. So come on, see what it's all about with a free 14-day trial. And when you use our promo code BLUECREW at sign up, you will get your first 2 months after your 14-day trial ends at 50% off the regular price being $4.99 per month. If you don't like it during your free trial, just cancel before the trial ends and you will owe absolutely nothing. For more information or to register, visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants. Don't forget, enter that promo code BLUECREW, BLUECREW, at the top of the page when you sign up, so that if you do like it, you'll get your 2-month discount. Text and data rates may apply. Please see your carrier's plan for details. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And just a reminder, folks, I was planning to do a mailbag tomorrow. I don't have a whole lot of questions, so please, let's get a few more questions so I can do a mailbag. It's been a long, long time since I've done a mailbag here on the Locked On Giants podcast, and I figured it's time. Look, it's the off season. I know you guys got questions and things you want to know, and I'm only happy to answer your questions. So please send them in to me. contact information is in the show notes, or you can tweet them to me. You can see my social media handle there, at Patricia_Traina. That is my X account. If you want to send them to me on Blue Sky, I think it's the same thing. It's at Patricia_Traina, Traina. So just, pop them in and I'll get to them on Friday's show if I have enough questions, that is. All right. In this final segment, the Giants made a couple of coaching changes on Wednesday that I want to talk about. They decided not to retain Jerome Henderson, the defensive backs coach, and Mike Trier, the safeties coach. And for what it's worth, Trier and Henderson, they were carryovers from Joe Judge's staff. Now, look, I had an inkling that maybe something was going to happen there, if I'm being honest with you. Because the minute it came out that they were going to keep Shane Bowen, I wondered if maybe Henderson and or Trier would be in trouble. And the reason why I say that is because, if you're Brian Dable and you're looking at the performance of the players and you're saying, well, Deontay Banks took a step back, what's going on here? Cordell Flott, had his struggles. We gave up a lot of big plays. What's going on here? Let's get somebody in here who can better coach these guys to play in zone coverage, which is primarily what Shane Bowen runs. That's for the most part. Folks, I'm not sure if that's the reason. I'm not sure that I would buy that. Players have to meet the coaches halfway, all right? You learn how to play in a system. You can't sit there and say, well, I excel in man coverage and that's all I want to play. I don't really want to learn, zone coverage. No. You make the effort. And I don't think it was a matter of Jerome Henderson, being a bad teacher. Quite the contrary. Everybody I would speak to about him said that he was an excellent teacher. He's a former, NFL defensive back. I think he was a second round pick back in his day. So the man knows the position. That being said, I think I see the logic behind this. Shane Bowen retained as defensive coordinator. So maybe Brian Dable was saying, okay, you know what, Shane? The defense wasn't very good last year. Let's let you have a say in who we pick to be the defensive backs coach and the safeties coach. I don't think necessarily Jerome was the problem. I don't think Mike Trier was the problem. And here's why I say that. Did Drew Phillips struggle? No. Did Trey Hawkins struggle? Before he got hurt, he was looking pretty good, right? Cordell Flott dealt with injuries. Deontay Banks dealt with effort issues as evidenced by him being called out, as evidenced by him being benched. Okay, is that on the coach or is that on the player? And I just feel like, I hate to use the word scapegoat, but the player has to meet the coach halfway. I don't know, if you could say, did Deontay Banks really meet Jerome Henderson halfway? I don't know. The evidence would suggest no, but I don't want to say that that is indeed the case because, I'd want to hear both sides of the story. Now with Mike Trier, okay, the safeties coach, Jason Pinnock wasn't that bad. Dane Belton wasn't that bad. And Tyler Newman wasn't that bad. So did you really need to make a change there? Now, you could look at the defensive secondary and say, well, they gave up a lot of big plays. Was it the coaching at the position level or was it the scheme? I think part of it was the scheme, if I'm being honest with you, which is why, even though I had a feeling something was going to happen with one of those two guys, I'm not sure I agree with it. I don't know that those are the two guys that I would have trimmed off of the coaching staff. Now, you figure they had to do something after John Mara got up there and said that the defense didn't play well and he was tired of seeing them go up and down, I would have maybe looked at the defensive coordinator, because it all starts with his schemes. Those guys are teaching the scheme. Now, if the scheme is not a good fit for a guy, is that the coach's fault? If they can't get that guy to really, morph into a studded, zone coverage, if he's really a studded, man coverage. But here's another thing I'm going to leave you with regarding Jerome Henderson that I wondered about. You might recall last year, 2020, the 2024 offseason, Henderson interviewed for the defensive coordinator role that went to Bowen. He didn't get it. And to say that he wasn't disappointed, that would not be accurate. He was disappointed. So the Giants, Brian Dable said, okay, you know what? You're not getting the job, but I'm going to promote you and I'm going to give you, in addition to, cornerbacks and defensive backs, I'm going to give you the title of passing game coordinator. Kind of like what they did with Mike Kafka, if you think about it. It's like, Mike, I'm taking away the play calling, but I'm going to make you the assistant head coach. Sometimes I really wonder about these titles. I really do, and if they're really, worth anything. But anyway, you kind of wonder if maybe, the Jerome Henderson sour on things. I don't think he did, because the man's always struck me as a professional. You just wonder about the dynamics there. And can we sit here and truly say that Henderson and Mike Trier were the biggest problems on the coaching staff for the defense? I don't think we can. I really don't. But that's just my observation. Brian Dable's call, okay? He felt that they were. He wasn't going to get rid of the defensive line coaches. He's not getting rid of the linebacker coaches. So somebody had to kind of take the fall on defense, especially after what John Mara said. Those are the two guys. And oh, by the way, a minor move, Ben Burris, who was a defensive assistant, he's also out, but he left, as I understand. I think he took a position with South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So some changes there. And then, of course, just, as long as we're talking about changes on the coaching staff, a couple guys are out on the strength and conditioning staff. The strength and conditioning director, Frank Parano, I think it was his name, and then Steve Smith, who was the director of nutrition. That is in, I guess, response to all the injuries that the Giants have had. I think Parano is actually going to join Mike Vrabel, or rejoin Mike Vrabel, on whose staff he was down in Tennessee. I think he's going up to New England. But some minor changes again, although I don't know that I would say, Henderson and Trier are minor. I mean, those are pretty notable, but here we are. So we'll see if they work out. We'll see who they hire, and we'll see if they get better results. All right. I still say get a veteran in here, and that will help fix a lot of problems, but we'll see if the Giants do that. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with us here. And don't forget, tomorrow, if I have enough questions, I'm going to do a mailbag for you. So please get them in. I'm going to probably tape around 4 o'clock on Thursday. So if you get them into me before 4 o'clock, I should be able to rock and roll and get those questions answered for you for Friday's mailbag. So until then, have a great one, everybody.